Good morning, all of you. Welcome to the first year intermediate BPC botany class. Today we are going to discuss the topic called living world. Students, you are all aware of the living and non-living organisms surrounded by you. So let us try to know the distinctive features of the living organisms and how do we differentiate the living from the non-living. So the main characteristic features which are exhibited by any living organisms, as we all know, is growth and reproduction. We all know all living organisms do grow, right? So you must be wondering what is meant by living. Living is nothing but it is life or organisms which are not dead, right? So any living organism, it means somebody which is having life and which are not dead. They are called as living organisms. So in this picture, you can see few of the living things as well as the non-living things. Now, the distinctive characteristic features exhibited by any living organisms, just now as I have told you, they are the growth and metabolism. Along with that, we find all living organisms showing the self-replication, okay, self-organization. And they have the ability to sense the environment and they also help in interaction with each other. So what are the distinctive characteristic feature of any living organisms? They are nothing but growth, metabolism, self-interaction, organization and ability to sense the environment. So these are the few characteristic features of living organisms. Now let us define what is meant by growth. Growth is nothing but increase in mass and increase in number of individuals. Okay, increase in the mass of the organism and increase in the number of individuals are the twin characteristics of the growth. And we all know all living organisms do grow. Now let us take the example of multicellular organisms. They grow by cell division, right? You can see here in the picture a single cell undergoes division to give rise to two cells. They further divide to give rise to further cells and many cells, such type of cell divisions keep on increasing to build a multicellular organisms. In plants, if you see, the growth occurs by cell division and it occurs continuously throughout their lifespan. You never find any plant showing the growth to a particular age. You find continuous growth in the plants. So in the picture, you can see the mitosis as well as meiosis cell type division, which are exhibited in the vegetative parts of the plant body. The mitosis cell division is exhibited, whereas in the meiosis cell division is exhibited in the reproductive parts of the plant body. Now, you can see growth in animals. Yes, but the growth in animals is only to a particular age. They do not grow continuously. But you find in animals, the cell division do occur in certain tissues to replace the lost cells. Like for example, if you are hurt, you get a wound, those cells are replaced and new cells are regenerated. But the growth is not continuous. It is there only to a certain age, right? Now, so we can say that the growth as a characteristic feature is present in all living organisms. So you must be wondering whether the unicellular organisms grow. Yes, they do grow. Here the growth is synonymous with the cell division. So unicellular organisms, they multiply by means of cell division. So in the single cell, if a cell divides, that itself is growth. Whereas in multicellular organisms, the cells keep on dividing to build up the organism. So you can see in this picture the cell dividing. Now one can also easily observe cell division in laboratory, which means in vitro cultures also. So in laboratory under the microscope, we can also observe the cell divisions taking place. So in vitro here means the technique of observing the cell division in laboratory. Now, we must be wondering, when living organisms are showing growth, we always have the thought that non-living organisms do not grow. But we are wrong in here, because some non-living objects also grow. How is that possible? Because mountains, sand dunes and boulders, because of accumulation of sand on their upper surfaces, they show growth. So this suggests that non-living objects also show growth as living organisms. Now here there is a fundamental difference between the non-living organisms growing and the living organisms growing. What is that fundamental difference? In living organisms, the growth is from inside, whereas in non-living objects, which we have seen in the previous slide about the mountains, boulders, etc., there was accumulation of the material from the outside. So living organisms show growth from inside. You can see a growth of the frog, and you can also see the growth of a small seedling into a small sapling. So therefore, you cannot say that growth is a defining property or a distinguishing characteristic feature of living organisms. And we also know that no non-living object is able to grow from inside, and a dead organism will never grow, right? We have not seen any dead organisms growing. So among the characteristic features to define the living organisms, the first one was the growth. Now coming to the second characteristic feature of living organisms, we find it as reproduction. Now what do you mean by reproduction? Reproduction is nothing but to procreate your own progeny. In multicellular organisms, that is both plants and animals, reproduction refers to the production of progeny, which possess the features more or less like that of the parents. So we always see reproduction being present in all the living organisms. Do we not? We find reproduction from the microscopic small living organisms to the highest organisms. Like here, for example, fungi multiply and spread easily into millions of asexual spores. You find in one of the slides the rhizopus showing the production of the spores in the sporangium. And in another slide, you also find the reproduction in one of the fungi. So organisms reproduce both asexually as well as sexually. So all living organisms show this characteristic feature of reproduction. Lower organisms like yeast and hydra, they reproduce by a type of asexual reproduction which is called as budding. You can very clearly see how the yeast is showing the budding. A parent cell is there, and upon that a small daughter cell is produced. And once this daughter cell grows, it will detach from the parent cell and it will lead an independent life. This process of reproduction is called as budding. You find budding not only in yeast but also in hydra. So budding is also a type of reproduction seen in lower organisms. Then you find in fungi, filamentous algae, protonema of the mosses, they also show type of reproduction which is called as fragmentation. Now what does fragmentation means? The part of the body, it gets broken into small bits or pieces or fragments, and these fragments, they can lead or develop into a complete individual organism. So such type of reproduction also you find in lower organisms like fungi, algae and protonema of mosses. In unicellular organisms like bacteria or unicellular algae or amoeba, reproduction is equal to their growth. That is, in unicellular organisms, the reproduction is in the form of cell division, and that cell division is synonymous with their growth. So there are many organisms which do not reproduce now. Now we have learned just now that there are organisms which reproduce through different methods. We have seen how the reproduction takes place through spores, through budding, through fragmentation. These are all various means of asexual reproduction. Now there are certain organisms which do not reproduce at all in their life period. Like for example, you have mules, sterile worker bees, infertile human couples, etc. So you cannot therefore take reproduction as an inclusive character to define the living organism. So reproduction, just like growth, cannot be taken as a characteristic feature to define the living organism. So now let us see what are the other characteristic features which will help us to understand and distinguish the living from the non-living. In the earlier, just now I have taught about the growth and development. Now we are going to learn about the next two characteristic features which are called as metabolism and interaction. Now what is meant by metabolism? We all know all the living organisms are made up of chemicals. They are made up of different kinds of chemicals. These chemicals, they belong to small or big molecules of different classes, sizes and functions. So these molecules, they will interact with each other to produce certain types of chemical reactions. So all living organisms, the chemicals are constantly being made and changed into some other compounds or biomolecules. Now here, what is the meaning of biomolecule? It is nothing but a molecule which is present in living organism, which are in the form of a large size, that is macromolecules, like proteins, polysaccharides, lipids and nucleic acids. So the conversion of one chemical into another chemical is called as chemical reaction, or you can also call it as metabolic reaction. The multicellular organisms, in them, the cellular organization of the body requires the metabolism. Different types of metabolisms are seen. Whereas you do not find metabolism in any non-living objects. Do you find? We don't find, right? In all living organisms, we find some or the other type of metabolism. Whereas in non-living things, we do not find the metabolism. All plants, animals and fungi and microbes will exhibit metabolism, whereas non-living things do not exhibit the metabolism. So we can very nicely say that metabolism is the characteristic feature of a or a defining feature of a living organism. So, and now you might be wondering, like if I do any chemical reaction in a chemistry lab or in a laboratory, in a test tube, that is also a chemical reaction. But that chemical reaction is outside the body of the living organism. Surely it is called as the living reaction, but it is not, cannot be termed into a metabolic reaction which occurs inside the body of the organism. So, among all the three characteristic features which we discussed just now, growth, reproduction and metabolism, the first two cannot be taken as the characteristic feature of the living organism, whereas metabolism can be taken as the characteristic feature of the living organism because metabolism is totally absent in non-living things. Now, coming to the other characteristic feature of the living organisms, which is also called as to sense the surroundings. All living organisms, either a small microorganisms to the highest level of human being, we have the ability to know our surroundings. We can sense the surroundings which are present, in which we are present, right? So this ability to sense the surrounding, the like response to environmental stimuli, is called as irritability. We human beings are bestowed with different types of sense organs through which we can sense the environment surrounding us. So we all have the ability to sense our environment, and this ability to sense the external stimuli is called as irritability. Similarly, like the human beings, the plants also respond to different external factors like light, water, temperature, other organisms and pollutants. So they also show the ability to sense the environment. For example, in plants, we find a phenomena called as photoperiodism. This will affect the reproduction in seasonal breeders. Both this photoperiodism is nothing but the daily duration of light and dark which the organism is exposed. Based upon it, the plants will show the flowering, or the reproductive cycles depends upon the photoperiodism. So this is nothing but the ability to sense the environment. So all organisms are aware of their surroundings, and this ability to sense their environment is also termed as consciousness. So consciousness or ability to sense the environment is therefore a defining property of living organisms, and we don't find it in non-living beings, right? So just go back to what we have learned: growth, metabolism, then we had reproduction, and then the ability to sense the environment. So among all the four characteristic features, growth and reproduction cannot be taken as the identifying characteristic feature, but metabolism and consciousness can be taken as the defining property of living organisms. So human beings are the only beings who are aware of themselves. So among all the living organisms, the only organisms which are aware of their themselves, that is also called as self-consciousness. So we are aware only about ourselves also, apart from other living organisms. For example, like we know within ourselves, we have a highest level of consciousness, and this nature of being aware of ourselves is also called as self-consciousness, which is bestowed on the human beings. You may be wondering, patients lying in coma in hospitals who are supported by artificial methods to survive, they do not possess any self-consciousness, but they are still in a living state. We can clearly say that they are still in a living state. And all living organisms, apart from showing the above characteristics which we discussed, growth, reproduction, metabolism, consciousness, They also show another important phenomena which is also called as interaction among themselves or interrelationships. So properties of tissues which are present in the constituent cells are because of the result of interaction among the constituent cells. So what does it mean here? There are many tissues. We are made up of multicellular organisms are all made up of many tissues, right? So the functioning of the tissue is because of the interaction among the constituent cells, not because of the single tissue itself. So this itself suggests that living organisms show interactions. Similarly, properties of any cellular organelles present in the living body are not present in the molecular constant of organelle, but it is because of the result of the interactions among the molecular components of the organelle. So the molecular interactions are also present in macromolecules like starch. Here the complete formula of starch has been given, and here it is the plant cell. So any mechanism which is done by the plant cell is not because of the cell itself or the cell organelle itself. It is because of the interactions among the molecular components of the organelle. So interaction will result in emergent properties at a higher level of organization. Interaction is true in the hierarchy of organizational complexity at all levels, and all living organisms, whether they are present living organisms or past or the future, they are all linked by sharing a common genetic material to a varying degree. So you find all the living organisms, we are somehow connected with each other, okay, because of the evolutionary trends. The present living organisms, the past and the future, all are linked together because of a common genetic material to a varying degree. Now, let us understand the diversity among the living organisms. Now, in the previous part, we have learned the differentiation between the living and the non-living, and we have learned the few characteristic features of the living. Now, among the living organisms which are present surrounding us, there is large amount of diversity. So, let us understand the diversity world. So, the number of species which are known and described till now, they range around 1.7 to 1.8 millions, which this whole range of number of species is referred to as biodiversity. So, biodiversity is nothing but number and types of organisms present upon the earth. So, we have a huge number of organisms present upon the earth, and they are very diverse in their nature. So when we explore the new areas as well as the old ones, we find new organisms being continuously identified. So we identify new organisms every day upon the universe. Various kinds of living organisms are continuously identified, and they constitute and increase our biodiversity also. So when large amount of organisms are being identified, there is a need for us to categorize them or identify them and name them in a proper manner. Okay, earlier the human beings used to name the plants and animals identified by them by their local names. So this caused a lot of confusion among the people living from one region to another region. For example, here the example of millet is given, which is in Hindi called as Mandua, in Tamil it is called as Kelvargu, and in Telugu it is called as Ragulu. Similarly, the another example of mango. In English it is called as mango itself, whereas in Hindi it is called aam, and in other languages, other local languages by different names. So if we start naming the organisms in different local names, there is lot of confusion. So the first characteristic feature or the importance of identifying the organism and giving them name in a particular manner so that the whole world will use the same name is called as nomenclature. So nomenclature is nothing but naming of the living organism or by a particular name which is being identified and used all over the world. The same name has to be used, and this process is called as nomenclature. And nomenclature helps in providing the scientific name to identified organisms. So when we identify the organisms, we can give a particular name. So it is possible only when the organism is described properly or it is accurated by identification. So what is identification? It is nothing but to determine whether the collected organism is already known or it is existing or it is a totally new organism. So in plants, identification can be done directly comparing the characteristic features with its authentic herbarium, specimen, or the museums, or the botanical gardens, or with the help of keys in a flora. So when you try to name an organism, we have to first identify the organism, and the scientific name must be given, so there is no confusion about it. So the scientific names which are being given to the plants as well as animals, they are being agreed based upon the principles and criteria which are provided in ICBN. Now, what is meant by ICBN? It is nothing but International Code for Botanical Nomenclature. Similarly, you have ICZN also, where you talk about naming of the animals. Here we are talking in botany about the ICBN, that is International Code for Botanical Nomenclature. So scientific names will ensure that each organism will have only one single name, and this name is used throughout the world in a similar manner, and it is also used by one animal or one living organism is given one name, and it is not used for any other organisms. So people all over the world can arrive to the same name without any confusion. Now, biologists follow these universally accepted principles which are provided in the guidelines of the ICBN. These are in the form of scientific name. The scientific name has two components. The first component is called as the generic name. The second component is called as the specific epithet. Now, this two-component name or the binomial nomenclature was first introduced by a scientist called as Gaspard Bauhin, and it was popularized by Carolus Linnaeus. So, we always remember binomial nomenclature as being proposed by Carolus Linnaeus. So, what does binomial nomenclature means? Binomial nomenclature means every living organism is given a scientific or biological name by the biologist as identified by the principles of ICBN, and every biological name or every scientific name will have the generic name and the specific epithet. So, biological names or scientific names, to understand it in a proper manner, we can take one example. The scientific name of mango is written as Mangifera indica. Here, the first letter or the first word, Mangifera, it represents the genus, while indica represents the particular species or specific epithet. So, as I said, binomial nomenclature will have two words. The first word represents the genus, the second word represents the species. So, here the scientific name of mango is written as Mangifera indica. Mangifera is genus, indica is the species. So, some of the understated rules of nomenclature are: biological names are generally written in Latin and they are in italics. That is the first rule of the binomial nomenclature. All the scientific names or the biological names are written in Latin and in italics. And the first word of biological name will represent the genus, and the second word is composed of the specific epithet. And both the words in biological name, when handwritten, they are separately underlined and they are printed in italics to indicate their Latin origin. Okay. And the first word which represents the genus will always start with a capital letter, while the second word which represents the specific epithet will start with a small letter. So, name of the author who has identified that particular living organism's name or given the name, his name will follow the name of the organism in an abbreviated form. You can check the example here, Mangifera indica Linn. Linn is the name of the author called Linnaeus, who identified or given the name for the mango plant, which is Mangifera indica. The first word is genus, the second word is species, and it is followed by the name of the author in abbreviated form. Now, next, after identification, we give the name to the organism, and after giving the names also, there are huge number of living organisms present around us. So, we need to identify them and name them and classify them into different categories. So, the third step is classification. It is nothing but the process by which living organisms are grouped into convenient groups or categories. Each group which belongs to one particular category is in biological terms or scientific terms called as taxon. Now, when I say different categories and groups, let us see. When I say plants, you imagine all the green plants present, big and small. When I say animals, you imagine all the kinds of animals. Now, when I say only cats, you get a picture of a cat in your mind. When I say wheat, you get a plant which gives wheat, which is a food item. So, when you classify the living organisms, we classify them into different groups, or you can say as categories, and each groups belong to one particular category. Now, you can see here the different categories the living organisms are defined into, like plants, wheat, dogs, cats. All these categories in biology is called as taxon. Every category is termed or is given a term called as taxon. Now, organisms represents taxon at different levels. Here, based upon the characteristic features, all living organisms are classified into different taxa. Now, what do you mean by different taxa? We have so many living organisms surrounded by us, right? So, all the living organisms are first grouped or given different taxon. And these taxons are present in the form of a hierarchy, in the form of a steps of a ladder. So, therefore, the living organisms which we are surrounded by, they are thus characterized, then they are identified, they are classified and given the name as per the binomial nomenclature, and all these components, the characterization, identification, classification and nomenclature, they all form the basic components of a branch of botany called as taxonomy. So, taxonomy deals with nothing but the characterization, identification, classification and nomenclature of all the plants present upon the earth. Now, there is another branch which is also called as systematics. Now, what is meant by systematic? When we are defining the living organisms present around us into different groups, and we are calling those groups as taxa, here a step ahead, we include these or defining this group of organisms based upon their interrelationships or based upon the evolutionary trends seen in them. So, the study of different kinds of organisms, their diversities, and also the interrelationships among them together is referred to as systematics. So, systematic is the highest level of taxonomy. So, the word systematics is derived from the Latin word called as systema. It takes into account the evolutionary relationships between the organisms.